Hi, everybody. Anthony Crane here with Pocket Coach, and today's experiment is the end of iteration metrics experiment. So we talked about sprint reviews, and in them, we like to cover metrics. This video will show you some of my favorite metrics that you might use. So first off, if you're using like Jira, there's some great, I love Jira metrics like the velocity chart and the sprint report are two of my top favorites. So use your tools, but many teams don't have tools, and sometimes what we can do here sometimes is better, or we use Power BI to replicate what you're about to see. So I'm going to show you some of my favorite metrics, and we'll see what you think for team level. So first off, what's the problem? A team can run a lot of these value delivery acceleration experiments. That's what this whole kit's about, is accelerating how well you deliver value. So a team can run a lot of those experiments, but they may not know if the experiments are working. We need a way to figure that out. So the hypothesis is if you commit to a set of metrics, you can actually validate which of your experiments actually improve you. 3 months in general to test out a set of metrics, and you can pivot or persevere after 3 sprints. You hopefully will see a big increase in your team KPIs now that you're actually looking at them. And what do you got to do? You have selected a set of metrics to use to understand your team's performance and use them to study the impact of your experiments. Today's shirt, Ocean Paradise. Okay, so here is a little dashboard. It's in 2 pages. This is the first page, which is productivity. The second page is going to be quality. So productivity and quality. In productivity, we also look at predictability and we look at cost, that kind of stuff. Okay, cost, time, scope. So real quickly, these are the metrics I love to use for a team. This first one is release burndown. So if you are in a team where there'll be many sprints before you can truly release, there's things we can do to get you to the point where you release every sprint, or maybe even release 1,000 times a day, right? Those are some North Stars, but a lot of the teams I coach take so many sprints to release. So if you're one of those teams, this kind of graph is awesome. It shows that it's going to take us 9 sprints to release our product. The blue line represents our total amount of backlog in that release, and then the pink line represents how much is still open. And the goal is that your pink line should match your yellow line. Now, I'll show you. In my metrics, I always put a goal. Now, that stresses people out. They're like, I don't know what the goal is. It's okay. First of all, never just use a point metric. If you tell me I created 10 stories, I'm like, I don't know what that means. But if you show me a trend of how many stories you've been able to implement over the last 3 sprints, 5 sprints, 10 sprints, now I can see trends. Trends are key. Everything's trend. So if you look here, you'll see the trend then is that your pink line should match your yellow line. So with the goal, you don't have to have a number. You can also just have a trend direction. So in this case, the goal is that pink matches yellow and that the blue is stable. So if you look at blue, not stable. You look at pink, not matching yellow. In fact, we're way behind right now. So this is a team that's in trouble. We'll talk about what to do with a team in trouble in the second 5 minutes. Other things I look at here is velocity variance. So every sprint, what is their velocity in points? And you can see it's not stable at all, but at least it's rising. So rising is nice, and it looks like it's getting towards stability, but we want to get to stable velocity. Cost per sprint, right? A lot of people don't like to expose costs, so you can use headcount if you prefer number of team members per sprint. Cost per sprint shows you how much it costs, and you want that to be completely stable. So there's that red line, headcount or cost. Your iteration length, here's a team, look, 19, 15, 14, 15, 15. They don't have a lot of stability in their sprint length, which makes all the other metrics wonky. So you want to have a nice stable sprint length. But if you don't demonstrate it, then you don't realize, hey, not only did they only do 23 points here, but they did 19 days to do it. But it was the first sprint that team ever existed. The next sprint, they lost 4 days, but hey, they did it and they got 93 points done. So that's pretty exciting. The last one here is sprint accuracy. So this is how much they plan versus how much they do. And you can see the first sprint that this team was ever a team, they only got 39% of what they thought they were going to get done. Look at this, though. In iteration 4, they hit 90% of their plan. The goal is to be, by the way, 80%. If you get to 90%, you might be sandbagging, and now it's time to up your number. But then look, in I5, they dropped all the way to 57%. What happened here? How did their planning get so messed up? The second dashboard is all about quality. So I'll spend the next 5 minutes talking about quality dashboard, and then the final part will be going deeper on a couple of these metrics. So for quality, here's your stakeholder satisfaction. Every sprint we ask, how did you find the value of the sprint? You want to be at above 80% every sprint, and you can see this team has definitely nailed that. This one here is tests run. How many tests did they run? And the goal here is to be stable. Definitely not stable, right? What happened in iteration 4, man, they ran a whole lot of tests, but look, they didn't really find a whole lot of defects in here. Well, I wonder what happened to my legend. I don't see the, oh, there it is, typical. So the orange line is how many tests you would expect them to run. That's based on mathematics. You can see they ran way more tests than expected, and they didn't find any more, and there was way more than they planned originally. So that's really weird. And if we go to the number of defects found for iteration 4, that's a timer, so I'm going to set a second 5 minutes. If you go to iteration 4, you can see they didn't really find a whole lot more. So what is happening here? Why did they run so many more tests versus what mathematically they should have, versus what the plan said they should have? And in the end, they didn't even find anything, right? So we paid for this. The great set of questions that we could have when we're talking to them. Hey, what happened here? And the metrics help us to realize that. Over here, here's your defect backlog. This is the total open, how many open defects you have. So let me make that a little bit more clear. This is total open defects. And the goal here is that it's stable or declining. And you can see here, it's in fact rising. 5 is not a lot. They have 5 total defects on the entire product, but or in the new part of the product. But again, you want to see that stable or declining. Cost of poor quality tech debt, refactors, and spikes. So this shows total velocity. The entire bar is how many points. And you can see, again, we saw this team on the other slide. They kept getting faster and faster. I don't know if it's actually the same data here. But you can see how much of their velocity is spent on defects or on tech debt spikes and refactors. If you've read the book Project to Product, they like to call this flow distribution. How do you distribute your points across concerns? And the goal here is that all colors be stable. You don't want to see no points being spent on defects. You don't want to see no points being spent on tech debt, but what you want to see is stability so that we can use that to still effectively plan. What's really great is to combine this with this. If your total open defects is going up, then you need to increase the amount of points you spend on defects. And then that should flatten that out or even drive it down. Once you start driving it down, then you can spend fewer points on defects and more points on new functionality. So using these two graphs together can be pretty powerful. Last one here is defect density. So we have 2 types of it. The pink one is I got a window blocking me here. Okay. The pink one is your defects per story point. Or you could also do defects per line of code. That's more traditional, but some people don't know how to count lines of code. So you can do defects per line of code, otherwise per story point. But the blue is tests run per story point. And so, defects found per test, defects per test. So if you run a whole bunch you ran, 100 tests, 30% of those tests found a defect. That's huge, right? Here, you ran 100 tests and only 2 of them found a defect. So now your test effectiveness is down. So when there aren't a lot of defects being found, it isn't always the case that code is of high quality. It could be that your test suite is not a good test suite anymore. And so maybe your test effectiveness is down. So the blue line is test effectiveness. And so blue, you want that to be stable, not dropping like this. Pink, however, you want that to be going down. So there's some interesting ways of using those data. So there's 2 sets of metrics you can use to understand your team. All right, for the last segment, I'm going to show you a deeper dive on 2 things. The first one is, what happens when your team is this bad, right? This is not okay. You're way behind. So what happens now? I love this little sheet here. So this is something I don't see Jira Cloud or Jira Line or any of the tools doing. So first off, 1419, that's the total open backlog. That represents this dot right here, okay? Then it says how many weeks is a sprint, in this case, 3 weeks. So this is a team that did 3-week sprints. How many sprints in your plan, and that's 9. You can see that demonstrated here. So there's 9 sprints times 3 means there's 27 total weeks in the original plan. Now the cost original for this whole thing was supposed to be $1.3 million. Okay. The velocity, this is a number you can type in, but you can see the velocity here, 23 all the way up to 131. So they've typed in, hey, if we can sustain this 131, what do you, so now they're looking at this metric, right? So 130. If you sustain this 130 and you have 1419 to go, how many more sprints would you need? 11. That's just math, right? But how cool. You type in your sprint weeks, your original plan, your velocity, everything else is automatically calculated. And it says, by the way, you only have 4 sprints left because, you've used up 5 and there was 9 altogether. So you only have 4 left. So your overrun is 7 sprints. You're going to be 7 sprints late on the 9 sprint plan. And your your cost per sprint here is 150K a sprint, right? So you type it in, and that's how we find out the original cost. All right, so this is just the current state data. Now, when you're in a situation like this, you can use these metrics to make some decisions. Check this out. The time variance is 178%. We thought it was 9, it's going to be 16, right? It's 178% of plan. So options, and this is my favorite part of this particular sheet, options tells you what you need to do to get back to whole. The first option is if you cap your story points to 520 total points instead of this 1419 here. If you cap yourself at 520, you will be able to get done on time in those 9 original sprints, which means you'll have to drop 900 points from your backlog. That's our second time box. I'm going to set a timer for a third time box, and this will be the final time box. So 15-minute video here. If you drop 900 story points out of this 1419, you will be on time. And so now it's a matter of talk to your stakeholders. Hey, can we drop 900 points? Help us figure out which 900, and you'll get your release on time, right? Very exciting that we can have that conversation. Now, the other possibility is that we need more. You know what? Go the extra 7. These 7 sprint overrun. Let's just go for it. And so that's going to cost you 7 times 150 is $1 million extra over the original 1.3. So now you're at 2.3 million. Is it still worth it for the original scope? Okay. The next thing you could do is every manager's dream. All you got to do is increase your velocity to 355 story points instead of 131. Right? Look at how much this team has already increased, and you think they're going to get to 355. Dream on. But that could do it. If you got to 355, then you could make it on time and on budget. What this does is it takes that iron triangle and helps make it real here using metrics from the team. The other thing you could do is cancel. You're like, you know what? If it's going to cost $2.3 million instead of $1.3 million, this business case is no longer good. This business case is not worth it. So why don't we cancel now? If we do that, we will save $600,000. That's not nothing. That's over $500,000 that we can then use on a business case that can provide value. This is pivot without mercy, right? Or guilt. So all of the, and of course you can combine them. Well, what if we, instead of dropping 900 points, we drop 600, how many more sprints would I need, right? And so you're like, well, we do 130 and you want to do 300 more, that's 2, it's going to take you 3 sprints. So if you gave us 3 more sprints at times 150, that's $500,000. Give us $500,000 and we can get you another 600, another 300 points or whatever that was. Anyway, so you can do combination of this, but I love how clear this sheet makes it. So that was the first thing I want to show you guys, how powerful these things can be for discussing scope. The second thing I want to show you is Burndown. So a lot of people don't know how to use Burndown charts effectively. This is an actual Burndown from a real team, the team that had the metrics on that productivity dashboard. And when you look at this, again, same rules. Pink should be next to yellow. Blue should be stable. When you know those 2 rules, and you'll notice the goals aren't written in here, so we should probably improve that. Blue should be stable. Pink should match yellow. So if you look at this, not very stable, but not bad. For a team that's in their very first sprint ever, pink next to yellow, actually also not bad. So they actually did pretty good. But then notice in the second sprint, their stability kind of went way worse. And their pink got way farther away from their yellow. This team went downhill. What happened? I can tell you what happened. In this sprint, they had 19 days. Remember in the metrics, so if we go back to here, you can see they had a 19-day sprint, and then they went down to a 15-day sprint. They went from a 1-month sprint to a 3-week sprint, a 4 weeks to a 3-week sprint. So they shortened their sprint, right? Well, gosh, they weren't prepared for that. So if you look, if you were to stretch this yellow line out to 19, the pink line would kind of come down, right? Get closer to yellow. So the fact is they just were, they were adjusting to a new cadence, and of course there was an impact. But then look at their third sprint. Wow, they're getting a lot of stability now in their blue line. Their pink line is now in line, and they're doing a 3-week sprint. It looks like the experiment, helped them. And then check out sprint 4. It's like a dream sprint. If I saw this, I'd be like, someone's cooking the books. There's no way that they're this good. But I actually did look at this team, and they really were. I was with this team when they did this. So this is very flat blue line. You can see they're incredibly stable now. And then here, the pink line is just dreamily following the yellow line. They really just had an amazing sprint here. Okay. And then what happened? Sprint 5. What? They're farther away. The blue line has this bizarre spike here. The pink line flattened out for a minute, didn't get anything done, and then they finally started dropping again, right? So clearly right around day 11, something weird happened to this team. And so we know that. You weren't there. You don't know. But looking at the graph, you can tell something happened to this team. And so we talked to them, and guess what happened? Their product owner was changed. And the new product owner says, I want to change a bunch of stuff. So when you destabilize a team, this is exactly the kind of thing that happens. Honestly, this team did remarkably well, given that they had a product owner change. And the product owner change absolutely disrupted them. So this team is a hero team. You might think they got worse, but in fact, they were able to navigate something quite challenging. So there you have it. Those are the graphs I wanted to show you. This is what I do with metrics. Your teams have creative folk on there. use agile metrics to try to figure out how your team is performing sprint by sprint. Burndown charts are useless for over one sprint. Look at them across 5 sprints like this, and you start to see an amazing story. So there you have it. That's my my video on end of sprint metrics, and I hope you found it useful. I'm Anthony Crane with Pocket Coach, and I'll see you at the next video.